Good morning to you, viewers, and welcome to episode 8 of season 2 of the Can You Fix Nigeria Challenge. Today, I have with me Mr. Solape Adesina. Solape is the principal consultant at Westlat and previously network system consultant at Ericsson Nigeria, and is a boarding energy sector investor here in Nigeria. Solape, it's great to have you on the discussion this morning.
Good day, everybody, and thanks, Kunle, for having me. Let me just make one or two corrections. Westlat Nigeria.
Yeah.
My background is IT, but the oil and gas you mentioned, it is to join partnership with some people on an opportunity in the midstream.
In the midstream sector. Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much, Shola. Again, it's great to have you on the discussion today. I was really looking forward to having somebody who is going to be able to at least talk with us on the challenges of raising capital for major projects in the oil and gas or in the energy sector of Nigeria. So thank you for making time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
You too.
All right, then. So let me get straight into it. I'll get very straight into it, Solape. And the first thing I wanted you to do was to talk us through the process of raising funding for a major project. I mean, I know that you were recently involved in trying to raise funds for a major project in Nigeria, in the Nigerian energy sector. And I was wondering whether you could take a minute or two to talk us through that process and how you and your team, the team that you are part of, were able to do this work.
Okay, thank you very much. I will try and summarize so that it will take a while for you to unpack this, but let me just summarize.
Okay.
Our opportunity was to develop a refinery for the Nigerian market. So a refinery, as it is a large infrastructure, will have a ballpark amount, and I'll use for our own opportunity. It costs about $2 billion. Yeah, $2 billion for the oil and gas. You most likely will not have that kind of capital within the country. Yeah, to take care of that high ticket item. So what we do, we break it into pieces, and those pieces are the ones that help us to raise capital. So the first phase is called the feasibility study. So where you do front-end engineering design, that is to conceptualize the arrangements. You would have gotten an allotment of land, a kind of specification of the plates, the plates that you want to create from the crude components.
Okay.
So that takes like 10%. So you raise capital for like 10%, between 5 to 10%. Yeah, the actual 10% is where you now do a detailed engineering design. Now, when you do those two elements, which is the feed and the detailed engineering design, you should be able to raise capital among family and friends, amongst people that you can that believe in your idea. You can raise amongst there's, and I reeled out some. I'll mention high sovereign funds. In Nigeria, we have something called the NCDMB. It's for developmental funding. It takes care of local content, but the government gives funding for infrastructure projects. There's the intervention fund with the CBN. Those can help you to raise that 10%. So when you get to that 10%, you, in industry terms, you are something called, you can now source for funds on a financial roadshow. So you are investment ready. You have all your, what's it called? So you can now from 10%, you now go to 30%. So between 10 and 30, what you're trying to get is funding from outside, from sovereign wealth funds, like I mentioned, contractor financing, like several sovereigns, they support their large infrastructure companies to finance outside projects and all that. USA, Exim, like Italy has a bank called Sachi, supports several developmental projects outside. So those will get you to 30%. Then between 30 to 100%, now you will need what we call debt financing, and you get organizations like the AFC, Afrexim Bank, AFDB that can structure things for you to get debt financing. So that is in a nutshell.
Wow, well done, well done. That is a lot of, that's a lot of, that looks rather busy. So let me just recap quickly the stages that I've just heard you take us through. So first, you were saying to us, one, we need to do like a concept feasibility feed, and in that region, we're looking for about 10% of our total capital cost. In that, you're going to be looking within yourselves, local friends, families, local banks, those kind of things, to be able to raise that money. Once you complete that session, and then you have a detailed engineering that tells you what your final design is likely going to be, you will go on a road show. On the road show, you're trying to raise up to 30% of that money so that you can get the next phase of the project going. And then if you are successful at that stage, the roadshow, you will be going to sovereign wealth funds and places like that to raise that money. And then if you're successful at that stage, you will then go to the final phase where you're trying to raise between 30 to 100%. And the 30 to 100%, you will be doing more of debt financing, and you will be going to AFC, Afrinexim Bank, and other such players around the world. So this is typically a normal process of how you would take this financing of a major project. Wow, well done. That's very interesting. I guess that must be a lot of work for people like you and all the people who work in this kind of sector. So that's fantastic. Recently, let me bring you to a second question. So recently I was reading. In fact, the second question I wanted to ask you is this. How big are our own local banks or local institutions? Can they help us with this? Because the reason I ask you the question, let me tell you why I ask you the question. The reason I'm asking you the question is I sense that a lot of people may not be able to give us money. We as Nigerians, I'm not sure we have the best reputation globally anyway. So it must be difficult to raise this kind of money externally. Can our local banks help? Can they help?
Emphatically, no.
Mm.
I posed this question to a senior friend of mine, an uncle, one of the people that I look up to, and I want to shout out to him, Mr. Adetilewa Adebajo. He's one of the
Chilewa Adebajo,
people
yes, economist.
I look up to.
Yeah,
so he broke it down to me in this way. Pack all the Nigerian banks, all of them put together, plus or minus 40 trillion. Pack the pension fund, pack the pension fund, pack every other local, money entities, the entire financial institution for Nigeria itself, approximately 70 trillion.
70 trillion. So how much is that in dollars? To make the maths easy, you're saying about 70 billion US dollars, 75 billion US dollars.
Yes.
That's the size of our economy in total, basically.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So for us to, reading, it's in the common, it's out there on media and all that. We are in Nigeria using the infrastructure index. We need like 3 trillion US dollars to move the needle significantly for us to have so much, involvement in infrastructure. We don't have that kind of money. But guess what, Kunle? We're not the only ones. America as it is, the amount of money they require to maintain their index right now is far much more than we need.
Okay.
Singapore has committed for the next 10 years if not 10 billion, if my mind does not fail me, 10 billion or 100 billion yearly US dollars to maintain the infrastructure index that they have. What am I saying in this? If we make ourselves ease of doing business attractive, we will get this funding.
We will.
Case in point,
Okay.
the startup world ecosystem. You see how Nigeria is raising the bar regarding injection of funding. So if we do that, so I'm saying that to say it's not a scare for me that yes, we don't have the local capital, but if we make ourselves attractive, we will get that capital.
We'll be able to raise that money. Okay, but okay, well, I think you are onto something there. You know, recently, I would say President Bola Ahmed Tinubu went on a road show of his own. I mean, on the behalf of the country to try and raise some money. And I was really impressed when I heard him. He attended the pre-G20 summit in India, and there he was able to, he got commitments for about $13 billion. Then in Saudi Arabia, there were commitment to the whole continent of Africa to the tune of about $50 billion. Recently, I also saw that Shell came back to Nigeria with a commitment to invest $5 billion to the Shell Bonga North project. Now, so, but again, all of that is commitment, right? How confident are we as a country that these commitments, that these guys will honor those commitments? I mean, I know you may not be an expert at it, but in your own experience, from what you know, do we sense that these guys are going to be able to honor this commitment? Because if they honor that commitment, that's $40 billion immediately, you know, just on those three commitments that he has.
Off the top of my head now, several companies have come and have done similar commitments and trials. I'm sure there is a think tank that does a lot of exchange of ideas. So they would have given them some experience. My thinking, this is how they're going to play it. Probably between 10 and 20% commit the amount and send it. See how we fare in that. Okay. Then take another maybe 20 to 30%. Involve local partners, be it individuals or institutions that can partner with them. Case in point, Aliko Dangote and Bill Gates, their intervention for polio, malaria, and all that. It's because he saw a willing partner. So he's very confident or comfortable in pushing the narrative or pushing his interest here. So I'm sure it's the same template that will take place. So once they see that first government is making it conducive, then they have partners that will also, if not come at par with the same level of commitment, financial commitment, but also involve themselves in the idea, then they will further increase. So
increase. Yes. Okay. So basically what you're saying to us is that even though there's that commitment, those guys are not likely to give us all 100% of that money. They're going to drip it to us in stages. Yes. And then if they see that, if they give us the first stage and they see that we are performing with it, they will go to the next level. Basically, this is what you're saying. Okay, I see. Now that comes back to what you talked about earlier about governance, about corporate governance, about ease of doing business. And I think we will talk a little more about that as we go on. But let me ask you another question then. See, so basically, I was reading an article, right? And it talks about 3 or 4 big projects that NNPC has in the next 5 years. Okay, so there's the Trans-Sahara gas pipeline, which is going through Nigeria, Algeria, Niger to Europe. There's a parallel pipeline, which is an extension of the West African gas pipeline, which will go from Nigeria all across the 16 West African countries, arriving in Morocco, and then it will go to Europe, yeah? And then there are a few other projects. AKK pipeline is already started. That project is ongoing already. Nigeria Train 7 is ongoing already. But when they aggregated all of the major projects that NNPC has in the next 5 years, they're saying that NNPC needs about $32 billion. Okay, so $32 billion for NNPC. My question, though, is that in the absence of not having so much money, what can NNPC sell some of their existing assets in Nigeria to raise funding? I mean, can we make a case for that? Now, I ask you that keeping something in mind. When President Tinubu himself was campaigning, one of the statements he made, yeah, and I remember that when he went to the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, was that, look, we have kept 60% in our JVs, yeah, which is we want to take a lot of money from the JV, but it's not allowing those companies to work properly. Can we reduce our equity in these JVs to raise capital? This is my question to you. Is there any other way for NNPC to raise money, such as selling JV equity, to raise this $32 billion gap?
So let me give some international perspective into this.
Okay.
Gatwick Airport is not owned by UK.
Yes.
Ritz-Carlton is owned by an Egyptian. The chain. So why I'm bringing all this about is to give a confirmation that yes, if we need to reduce our equity in an engagement so that it becomes a win-win for by all means, by all means. So I'm told, I have not confirmed, but I'm told that it was during the Buhari regime, or was it Buhari or Abacha regime, that there was financial commitment by any government towards making sure that NNNG project, the second train, takes effect.
It was actually Shonekon, yeah. It was Shonekon just before Abacha, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. So in my head, I'm thinking, you are a householder. You know that getting an investment opportunity, it is going to be profitable. So why are you not doing it? So it's like opportunity costs. If I need to take care of this based on that. So a focused government, and it is not rocket science. Lee Kuan Yew did it. Margaret Thatcher did it. Ronald Reagan. You know, I can go on and on, you know, a focused government, even though you have various things requiring your attention for your financial commitment. If you focus on this, you actually reap or make benefits for the children yet unborn when they are going to reap the benefit of that sacrifice that you're going to make. So to answer your question, and I'm just using because you mentioned several AKK, currently, there are a lot of infrastructure projects. There's a road network from Cote d'Ivoire to Lagos. You know, I can name so many, but for you to be committed on as a government, as an entity, as a sovereign towards one of the things that will help you, you know, make money in future, that shows your interest, and things like that. International communities see that and they benefit, whether we like it or not. God has blessed the continent Nigeria. I'm told, I've not researched again, our crude is one of the lightest in sulfur content, and it is relevant for the what's it called. So we have a lot of things going good for us. Just we need to just set our acts together so that we are viable.
Okay. So, but let me ask you a question though. Let me just ask you a quick question now, following from what you have just said. So when you were making, and I agree with you, by the way, but when you made that, when you gave the example of Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore there, you mentioned Thatcher, you mentioned Ronald Reagan, okay? To a large extent, these are very competent people. I mean, these are competent people. We were talking a few minutes ago about, okay, how did we make the LNG commitment? Actually, the LNG commitment was made under Shonekon. And Shonekon was in government for what, 6 months? But before that, he was chairman of UAC. So he's a business-oriented person. He understood what business was or what business is. So my question to you is that part of the problem that we have in funding projects, in raising capital, in attracting foreign investment, is it because the people at the end actually are not business people? Does that have anything to do with it? Are we struggling because we don't have business people at the top, or what?
Personally, I don't think so. I'm a student of
Okay.
history.
Okay.
The current president of Brazil in his first term, and I dare
Lula.
say
Mm.
that
Yeah.
when he was there for the first term or the first stint of his presidency, I don't think he was educated. He was a union leader.
He was a union leader. Yes, he didn't complete his school. Yes, you're right. You're
The
talking about
father,
Lula, anyway. Yes.
yeah, the father of modern Turkey, Ataturk.
Yeah.
He was a military personnel. I don't think he went to school. I mean, what we call formal education. So
Like.
I don't think it has anything, and I can go on and on. I can go
Hmm.
on and on. You
Hmm.
know, I don't think it has anything to do with our companies. I think for most of it, it has to do with the makeup of the person, how the person was formed, how the person has a resolve to tackle challenges,
Hmm.
and push forward an agenda for all, an agenda for all.
Okay.
So educational background, what we call formal education, I don't think it is, but the ingredients of making a person compassionate, resolute,
Hmm.
those are the things that that informal education needs to be imbibed to the person that is leading, not just to the president, to the league of our leaders.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. No, so let me turn that question though. Before I leave this topic, let me ask you one last question. So I know that as tough as we say it has been financing, yeah, some local guys have been successful. Do you understand? I mean, Dangote, whether we like it or not, has basically funded a $19 billion project from Nigeria. Now, he's funding it. It's a $19 billion refinery project, 650,000 barrels a day refinery. It's the single largest train in the world. He's done it from Nigeria. The AKK pipeline is being done by Rwanda. It's a $2 billion project. Wale, Tinubu, and all these boys, they are funding it. So my question is, and I think Bua Rabiu is also funding a refinery in Akwa Ibom. It's a 200,000 barrel
250.
refinery. 250, exactly. So 250,000 barrel capacity. So boys, there are people who are doing this in Nigeria. What does that say? I mean, does that give you confidence that other people can come up? I mean, if this three, at least we've given three examples there, if these guys are able to fund it, what are they doing right? So two questions. What are they doing right that we can learn from? And does that give you confidence that we're likely to see more of that, or have we peaked?
No, we've not peaked at all.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a very simple example that I follow a lot of trends that are happening internationally. Even
Okay.
as we are talking about airlines and airline travel. If you compare the travel for America, how many planes are daily basis are in their airspace compared to what we have here? We are still miles apart.
Hmm.
So we've not peaked at all. Now, the
Okay.
people that you mentioned, track record also comes to play for them. When you
Okay.
mentioned the Wale Tinubu, fortunately, I read about it. They raised 800 million US from AFDB for that project.
For that
So
project.
the track record. And if there's track record and there's competent hands, some things that are very good for us, you'll be surprised the amount of good hands we have outside of this country. Just recently, I just heard that Cambridge University elected one of Nigeria as one of their presidents. So
The
we
president.
have the wherewithal,
Hmm.
the final ingredient, and I cannot stress it enough. This is my own personal bias.
Hmm.
Focused
Hmm.
leadership,
Hmm.
focused leadership. you know,
Hmm.
going beyond. And we've had some kind of that before now. Our founding fathers, the Tafawa Balewa, the Obafemi Awolowo, I believe they had an interest. They were focused on independence. One goal, independence, and it made it right for us. So
Hmm.
we as well, we need to also have that kind of mindset and move it. We've not picked at all.
We've not
We've
peaked.
not
Okay.
picked at all.
Okay, so let me move this discussion ever slightly to the side. And okay, another question I wanted to ask: unlike other countries, so unlike other countries in Africa, one of the things that you said at the beginning of this discussion that always intrigues me is how weak our financial institutions are. Do you understand? I mean, our banks have been around forever. We're 200 million, do you understand, population country. I'm reading about Qatar, yeah? And there's a bank in Qatar, QNB. QNB alone is what their book is worth over $800 billion. Just one bank. Do you understand? One bank. Okay, so my question is, why have we traditionally struggled with these banks? Let me tell you what my train of thought is. So say 20 years ago, Citibank is, for example, has been in Nigeria for 20 years or 30 years or more. Do you understand? And those guys have big books. Standard Chartered, they're in Nigeria, right? Standard Bank of South Africa. I mean, there are so many of these international banks. My question is, how is it possible that we're not able to attract big investment from these people? The banks is on one end. At another land, you mentioned about Gatwick as an example during this discussion. Yeah, and that Gatwick is not owned by the UK government. You're actually right. The consortium that runs Gatwick, the guy who leads is actually a Nigerian. Do you understand? He's the guy who bought it. This guy's got about 20 ports in the US. Yeah. So my question is, how is it that Nigeria is not able to bring people like that together and fund major infrastructural gap? I think our banks, the banking, Citibank, all international banks with us, the equity, they're not. Am I wrong in saying that they're not putting money into this economy? What do you think?
So I have, and I will not mention this, I have some privy knowledge. Let me just try and shave it a bit to whet your appetite.
Okay.
When we were raising capital, one of those foreign banks, they told us that from foreign hands, from foreign nationals, they had warehoused 300 million US dollars. And the reason for the warehousing is just get us projects that you feel are viable so that we can put this money into it. The reason why they ejected the money was because at a point the financial markets was now looking a bit bleak, so they wired their money out. But it was warehoused in Nigeria for several years. So we get that kind
So the
of
money is there, bottom line.
Well, Kule, I cannot stress it enough. I cannot stress it enough. So the banks, these banks that you're talking, I mean, we have moved from A to E. Let's be frank. When I was young, I used to go with my father to, I won't mention name, old generation banks, but I would be days of tally number. Now you're doing internet banking. Now you're doing mobile banking. Now you're doing so many other, if I want to, I mean, apps and etc. So they've moved the needle enormously. They are also financing the first syndicate of the 19 billion from Dangote. It was from the Nigerian banks.
Oh,
EcoBank and one other bank were championing it for him. The first syndicate. So they bankrolled a considerable amount of that amount.
Of the 19 billion. Oh, I see.
What they did was they made sure that they got what's his name? They got how can I put it? They got people from just a minute. Okay. Let me just hold that. They got people from foreign investors. They got them to buy into it. So they did a syndicate with them. They bought the foreign exchange and they were able to get people involved, So yeah, I believe it's viable, yes.
Okay. So all right. So now my time is beginning to run out. So I'm going to try and cap and start capping. So just yesterday, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu inaugurated the new board of the NNPCL, in Nigeria. I noticed that Chief Pius Akinyelure was named as chairman. And I don't know whether you're familiar with him. He used to be the director of finance in Exxon, Nigeria, many years back. So please 1 second. Yeah. All right. So are you comfortable? Are you comfortable with this new appointment? Like I mentioned, Solape, we have Chief Pius Akinleye-Lure, who has just been named as chairman of NNPCL. Mr. Abakari was also retained as MD CEO. It's a big change. Are you excited? Are you looking forward to some changes in NNPC in the next few years with these new appointments?
If you're going to take my own
I'm taking yours. I'm taking yours.
Yeah, but don't rely on it. It's a personal opinion.
Absolutely.
I was actually expecting a major shift. I was expecting a major shift, So, but I'm not disappointed. I'm not disappointed. Rather, I'm still optimistic about the deliverables, the Aramco, the one for Brazil. I've forgotten the name.
Yeah, Petrobras.
Yeah. Those large public institutions that are even investment vehicles for their sovereigns. I aim or I dream for that for our country. So let us. I take a observe and see what is going to transpire. As far as they are being given a mandate or a direction on what to do, I mean,
we'll see how it goes. Last question then. Last question to you. So recently I was talking to one of my friends, and we were talking, and in his own opinion, part of the reason why NNPC struggles and why they cannot fund a lot of their projects is that their investment decisions are bad. And I asked him, I said, how do you mean? He said, look, if you look at the Saudi, so you just mentioned the Saudi Aramco now, yeah? Saudi Aramco is investing everywhere. They're investing in Turkey, they're investing in the US, they're investing everywhere in the world. If you take a Petrobras, which you just mentioned, Petrobras is a part owner in Egina in Nigeria, in Akpo. They're not only investing in Brazil or investing they are investing everywhere and around the world. They're putting 5%, 10%, so that if things are not working in their own country, they can take equity and take profit from other countries where things are working. And he says to me, he said, if you look at NNPC, this is part of the problem with NNPC. They put all their eggs in one basket, they put everything in Nigeria, and they make all the investment so that if things are bad in Nigeria, then things are bad for NNPC. So do you think we are matured enough, or should NNPC be looking in this? How do you see this? Should they also be thinking about investing in other countries as well, just to share on the profits, which is going on in places like that? What do you think?
By all means, sorry to go spiritual. The good book tells us that you should cast your bread amongst many waters, So
we'll find it many days ends. Huh?
Yeah. So why not if not?
Yeah.
Surely NNPC has an investment arm called Duke Energy that I'm aware of.
You're right.
So the initiative has been done. That it is not profitable or that is not as profitable as we want, that's another conversation. But the initiative has been done.
So hold on, Shola. Are you saying Duke Energy, which is part of NNPC? I know of Duke Oil. You're saying it's an investment arm of NNPC, is it?
It's the one that does the futures for crude. It's the one that does all so every transaction with regards to Nigerians crude, the sweet crude, either Iquaibo or the other one.
Bonnie Lights, yeah.
Yeah, it goes through Duke Energy. Their office is in London, So the investment arm of NNPC. That is the investment arm of NNPC. So the initiative has been done. That it is not making as much impact. That's another conversation.
That's another issue.
Yes.
I see. Well, it's been fantastic having this discussion with you about financing. Let me try and recap. Some of the big things that I've taken from this discussion, at least 3 or 4 big ticket items that I've taken from this discussion. So basically, the number one thing I learned from this discussion today is that we can fund big projects because nobody expects us to take all the money for a big project. You are doing a $2 billion project, or you are involved in a $2 billion project. You're not trying to raise $2 billion at once. You're trying to do it in stages, and those stages are 10%, 30% mark, and then post 30% mark. You mentioned to us that you talked about the roadshow, about going to sovereign wealth funds, about going to the Afrinexim Bank, Bank of Industry, local banks, pension funds, the CBN intervention fund. Those are some of the examples that you mentioned in terms of how we can raise capital. So for me, that is a big thing that I've learned. Number 2 thing that I learned is the fact that if we try to look inward, we will not be able to find a capability. You mentioned the number 70 trillion Naira is what the total number of all our pension funds and banks are capable of raising all together, which is only about $70 billion. That's only 200% of the immediate need of NNPC. So we cannot raise that money internally. We need to raise it outside. Thirdly, you mentioned about the fact that even though President Bola Tinubu and all the people, the team, they're trying to raise money and commitment from around the world. Whether we get that money will be dependent on how we perform with the initial seed money that is given to us by these investors. So it's been great actually speaking to you today on investment and on financing major projects in Nigeria. I thank you very much for your time. You're muted, Solape. Solape, you're muted.
Apologies. Thank you very much for having
us. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers. Yeah. Bye-bye.